back in the day, we were chasing the dream, como dice, ¿no? And then, you know, a cousin of mine said, hey, pues una canción que pues, creo que les queda a ustedes, ¿no? And he said, pues Cruz de Madera.
La cruz de madera de la más corriente.
And it come to know, you know, the rest was history.
Love that.
And what a history it has been for Michael Salgado, the Salgado brothers, and the family. We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me. And my brother and all of us here in the band, you know, it's been probably, I'm not sure how many times we've been up here at the show, and we thank you guys for having us all the time.
Absolutely. We want to talk about how everything started, Michael. When did you know that you wanted to be on stage performing?
I guess I was about 14. We lived in West Texas, Stanton, Texas, and I remember my dad, you know, he's always, you know, when we were younger, he had his own band, and then he kind of let the band go, but he always enjoyed music, so at home, you know, I would always sing with him, and you know, and we were always recording some things there at home. And so when we lived in Stanton, you know, I was like, well, what I want to be, you know, don't want to be, you know, how your dreams back then when you're a kid, and you're like, do I want to be a lawyer, doctor, this, farmer, whatever, you know, because at the time we were farming as well. So, so it was always, you know, the music, and that was just something that I always wanted to do. That was a dream of mine, to be able to achieve and live, you know.
And what instrument did your dad play?
He played the accordion.
Ahí está.
And at the time, I was playing the bass, and my brother Ernie was. I
was playing drums.
Yeah, he was messing around with the drums, and we were kind of, you know, experimenting here and there. And I played the bass a little while, and I just, I was like, well, you know, because back then, and still today, you know, an artist that I respect greatly is Don Ramon Ayala, and so. You know, my dad listened to Ramon, so we would listen to Ramon, and so, you know, I was like, well, you know, I want to play the accordion like him, you know, and I already did the lead vocal, and my dad did the backup, so I was like, well, you know, it's a good position. Even back then, when I was 14, 15, right, I was like, well, I want to play accordion. So eventually, I learned a little bit about sexto, and then I went to the accordion. My dad started, you know, I started picking it up at home and listening to Ramon Ayala music, and that's how I picked it up. And I remember our uncles, Uncle Vivian and James. James was one of the originals of the 30 years, right, back in the day. And I remember my Uncle Vivian would say, hey, you play the accordion, you know, because you play more. My dad, you know, he played what he played, and I kind of, you know, learned a little bit more on the accordion, so they wanted me always to get on the accordion. And eventually, you know, it happened, but it was, you know, we began back in playing the little bars and things like that, you know. We used to play 4 or 5 hours a night, and
too long.
Yeah, I remember back in
very long.
Yeah, back in Rankin, Texas.
But you would do that at night, and then during the day, one of the things that they would do is they would sell like watermelons door to door. Let's talk about some of the things that you did with your dad, as far as the stuff that you could sell door to door and stuff that you would do throughout the day.
Yeah, I mean, we were, you know, back when we were in the farming days, we would, in the summertime, well, they would give my dad a couple of acres, the farmers, you know, and so he would plant watermelon, squash, cantaloupes, toda la fruta, no? And so we would pick it, and then we would go door to door selling it, you know, and if we weren't doing that, well, we were going door to door to cut grass,
sure,
you know, cutting grass service everywhere. And so if we weren't doing that, we were raking leaves at yards. So he always had us doing something, but
humble beginnings.
Yes.
Como empezamos todos, ¿verdad? And here it is, you know, 30 years later, Michael. And Ernie, you guys.
I was only 10.
You were only 10.
That's what I say every year.
I was only 9 and a half.
Sí, como no. The beauty of it, though, is that you did it together as a family.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure that there have been times, as in most families, where,
Right.
you know, it wasn't always,
There's struggles.
you know, but you worked hard at it. And,
Oh, yeah.
and you picking up the bajo, how did that happen, Ernie?
It literally transitioned from, I was playing bass. One night we went to Lubbock. One of the guys didn't go with us. And that's when Joe, rest in peace, he came on the bass. And that night, I played the bajo that night. Never played it, but I already knew the basics. And then after that, from that day on, it was history. He stayed on the bass after that. That was 1993. Yeah.
¿Y la segunda voz cuándo empezó?
Y la segunda voz fue después. Fue después, años después. Well, no, at that time I was already singing segunda. Pero años después, when Michael and my dad were singing, I wouldn't sing, I wouldn't talk, I wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Now I can't shut up.
Well, how young were y'all on stage when y'all were going, playing at the bars?
It was like,
and stuff?
we were like 10, 11, 12 years
So
old.
y'all weren't allowed to get down from the stage or anything like that, right? Or what were the rules back
Well,
then?
the fun fact that nobody knows, fun fact,
Mira, fun fact. Ahí vamos a
is
comenzar.
in Rankin, Texas, when we started playing there, we would wear John Deere caps. As a matter of fact, the picture came out ago. We would wear John Deere caps. The lady wouldn't pay us, but she would feed us. So we would play there, and we would get done. They would ask. Back then, Michael would already sing country.
Okay.
Back
Yeah,
then.
yeah, way back in the day, I was probably, I don't know, 13, 14.
Younger.
And I listened, because we would drive John Deere tractors back then in the farm, and so we would listen to the country back then.
The,
Right?
the traditional old school stuff.
So, I listened to Ronnie Millsap, Ricky
All the
Skaggs,
greats.
and,
George Jones.
George Jones, and
Clint Black.
There you
go. I gotta go see him.
all these great artists. And so then I started picking up, wanting to do country, and that's kind of what we would do out there when we started out. And they would ask, like, hey, do you guys do country? And my dad would say, yeah, my son does. So I would sing a country song or two, and they'd tip us. And
What I was gonna say is, when we would take a break, we would walk the whole little bar with our caps, and they would give us tips. That was our money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we would take home about $300, $400.
That's
Not
not
bad.
bad back in the day.
1980, I'm not gonna say.
No, don't say it. One of my favorite stories, and we'll probably have to wait for you to answer on the next interview, was 2 words: Billy Goat.
Billy Goat.
yeah.
That's a good story, you guys.
Yes.
I'm teasing. If y'all want to
It's
stay,
Billy Goat.
that's right, Billy Goat.
There you go.
That's something we're going to continue here
For
in the next
sure.
interview because we got to go to break.
Absolutely. Well, actually, we're going to go over to a vintage video real quick. This is going back to 2008.
A ver.
Oh, wow.
A ver si te
Sí.
recuerdas.
It's been some years back, and the 30 years, and that's been what, maybe
14?
20 something years
sorry,
at that point.
something
And
like that.
18 years ago.
I also know that you're celebrating your 30th, so that's really
Yeah,
great,
well,
man.
Dejan go
really
countdown.
proud
Go
to hear
countdown.
that.
Whoa,
Yeah.
30 years across the USA, 135 stations. We've done great. Thank you. And it's just, we're celebrating this year. This
Celebrating
is the
together.
year. ¿Verdad que sí?
Can we
Yes,
get a
sir.
toast?
To do that. We're gonna
We
be
will
doing
get
that.
a toast at the end.
That is for
I
sure.
worked on that. Thank you to our lovely producer Iris.
Absolutely.
All right, let's check out the video.